Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES horizon and looked at the stars. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a boy. Today, humans would meet aliens for the first time. Not as enemies, but as friends. The ship was not built for war. It carried no weapons, no shields, no armor. Instead, it held gifts. Beautiful paintings from Earth's greatest artists. Music from every culture. Books full of human stories. Technology that could help other worlds grow food and heal the sick. Lisa Parker walked up to Jake. She was the ambassador, the person who would speak for all humans. Her hands shook a little as she held her speech. She had practiced it 100 times, but she was still nervous. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked her. Lisa smiled. "As ready as anyone can be. We're about to change history." Ryan Bell, the security chief, frowned as he checked his small team. They had only basic weapons, nothing that could hurt a real military force. Earth's leaders had been clear about this. They wanted to show the galaxy that humans came in peace. "I still don't like this," Ryan said. "We know almost nothing about these Zephyrians. What if they're not friendly?" "Then we'll learn from them," said Amanda Torres. She was the scientist who studied alien life. Her eyes were bright with excitement. "This is the greatest moment in human history. We're about to meet our neighbors." The ship moved toward Kepler Prime, a space station built for meetings between different species. It was neutral ground, where no one could attack anyone else. At least, that's what the rules said. Jake remembered the day Earth received the first message from space. It had come from the Galactic Council, a group of alien races that controlled most of the galaxy. They had been watching Earth for years, waiting to see if humans were ready to join them. The message was simple. If humans wanted to be part of the galaxy, they had to prove they were civilized. They had to show they could solve problems with words, not weapons. They had to demonstrate that they were peaceful. Earth's leaders had worked for months to prepare. They chose their best diplomats, their smartest scientists, their most peaceful people. They built the horizon to be a symbol of human hope, not human power. Amanda looked at her files about the Zephyrians. They were reptile-like beings who controlled 3 star systems. They were strong, proud, and had conquered many smaller species. Their culture valued strength above all else. They saw fighting as an art form and weakness as a disease. "Maybe we should have brought something more impressive," Amanda said. "These files make them sound like warriors." "That's exactly why we need to show them we're different," Lisa replied. "Violence only leads to more violence. We need to break that cycle." The horizon was not alone in space. Earth had other ships, hidden in secret places. But those ships were for defense only. They would never be used to attack. Earth's military leaders had promised this to the world. As they got closer to Kepler Prime, Jake felt his heart beating faster. Through the windows, he could see the massive station. It was bigger than any city on Earth. Ships from dozens of different worlds were docked there. "Look at that," Ryan whispered. "Some of those ships could destroy our entire fleet." "Good thing we're not here to fight," Jake said. The communication system crackled to life. A rough voice spoke in broken English. "Human ship, this is Kepler Prime Control. You are cleared to dock at Bay 7. Welcome to the galaxy." Lisa took a deep breath. This is it. Everything we've worked for. As the horizon docked, Jake could see alien beings watching them through the station's windows. Some looked curious. Others looked hungry. A few looked like they were deciding whether humans would make good slaves or good meals. The airlock opened with a hiss. The Zephyrian delegation was waiting for them. They were tall, covered in green scales, with yellow eyes that never blinked. Their leader wore medals that showed his many victories in battle. "I am War Chief Thrax," the leader said. His voice was like rocks grinding together. You are the humans we have heard about. Yes, Lisa said, stepping forward. I am Ambassador Lisa Parker. We come in peace and friendship. Thrax looked at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Peace, friendship. These are words for the weak. We prefer to think of them as words for the wise, Lisa replied calmly. The Zephyrians led them through the station. Jake noticed that other aliens moved out of their way quickly. Some looked afraid. Others looked angry. None looked happy to see the reptilian warriors. They entered a large meeting room. The walls were covered with weapons from different worlds. Thrax sat across from the humans, his yellow eyes studying them like a predator watching prey. Tell us about your world, Thrax said. How many ships do you have? How many soldiers? How many weapons? Lisa exchanged glances with Jake. This was not how they had hoped the meeting would start. We have enough to defend ourselves, Lisa said carefully. But we prefer to build rather than destroy. We want to share our knowledge with the galaxy. Share? Thrax's tongue flicked out. What do you want in return? Nothing but friendship, Lisa said. We believe that all species can benefit from working together. The other Zephyrians whispered among themselves. Jake couldn't understand their language, but their tone was mocking. They seemed to think the humans were fools. You humans are strange, Thrax said. Where we come from, the strong take what they want, the weak serve or die. That's not how we do things, Lisa said firmly. We believe in helping each other grow stronger together. Amanda opened a case and pulled out a small device. This is a medical scanner. It can detect diseases before they become serious. We would like to share this technology with all species. Thrax took the device and examined it. Interesting. And you would give this away for nothing? For the chance. To be part of the galactic community, Lisa said. For the opportunity to learn from other species and share what we know. The meeting continued for hours. The humans showed their gifts, explained their culture, and talked about their hopes for the future. The Zephyrians asked many questions about Earth's defenses and military capabilities. Jake began to feel uneasy. The questions were too specific, too focused on finding weaknesses. But Lisa continued to answer honestly, believing that transparency would build trust. As the day ended, Thrax stood up. We will consider your request to join the council. There will be a ceremony tomorrow to conclude our meeting. Thank you, Lisa said. We look forward to a long friendship between our peoples. Thrax smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Yes, a long relationship indeed. As the humans returned to their ship, Ryan pulled Jake aside. Something's wrong. Those questions weren't about friendship. They were about finding out how to attack us. Jake looked back at the station, where Zephyrian ships surrounded their peaceful vessel. Maybe you're right, but it's too late to change course now. That night, as the horizon drifted in the shadow of Kepler Prime, none of the humans slept well. They had come to make friends, but they were beginning to wonder if they had walked into a trap instead. The galaxy watched and waited. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tomorrow would change everything. The alarm on Jake's ship rang at 4 a.m. He jumped out of bed and ran to the bridge. Ryan was already there, staring at the screens with a worried face. What's happening? Jake asked. Zephyrian ships are moving, Ryan said. There, surrounding us. Jake looked at the display. Dozens of warships were slowly closing in on the horizon. Their weapons were powered up and ready to fire. Maybe it's just a show of force, Jake said, but he didn't believe it. Lisa arrived on the bridge, still wearing her sleeping clothes. Are we in danger? Before anyone could answer, the communication system buzzed. Thrax's face appeared on the screen. His yellow eyes were bright with excitement. Humans, he said, it is time for the closing ceremony. Come to the main hall immediately. We'll be right there, Lisa said. The screen went black. Jake looked at his crew. They all knew something was wrong, but they had no choice. They had to follow diplomatic rules. Amanda packed the remaining gifts in a small case. Maybe we're just being paranoid, she said. Maybe, Jake replied. But he told Ryan to keep the ship ready for a quick escape. The human delegation walked through the station's corridors. Other aliens watched them pass, but something was different. Their eyes held pity instead of curiosity. A few even looked away, as if they couldn't bear to watch. The main hall was large and grand. Weapons from 100 different worlds hung on the walls like trophies. The Zephyrians stood in a circle around a raised platform. Thrax waited at the center. "Welcome, humans," Thrax said loudly. "Today, we will show the galaxy what happens to weak species who think they can join the council." Lisa stepped forward. "I don't understand." "We came here in peace. Peace is for the dead," Thrax said. "You told us about your pathetic defenses. You showed us your weakness. Now you will pay for your stupidity." The Zephyrians raised their weapons. Lisa had only a moment to understand what was happening before the shooting started. The first blast hit Lisa in the chest. She fell to the ground, her speech about friendship scattered around her. Jake tried to catch her, but more shots rang out. "Run!" Ryan shouted. He pulled out his small weapon and fired back at the Zephyrians. His shots barely scratched their armor. Amanda ran toward the exit, but a Zephyrian warrior blocked her path. She tried to dodge, but he was too fast. His claws caught her arm, spinning her around. Jake dragged Lisa toward cover behind a pillar. She was still breathing, but blood was spreading across her shirt. "Why?" she whispered. "We came in peace." "I know," Jake said. "I'm sorry." Ryan's voice crackled through the communication device. "I'm sending an emergency signal to Earth. Everyone needs to know what happened here." More shots echoed through the hall. Jake could hear his crew members screaming. Some were already dead. Others were trying to fight with tools and scientific equipment. Thrax walked slowly through the battle, not even bothering to duck when the humans fired at him. His armor was too strong, and their weapons were too weak. "This is being broadcast across the galaxy," Thrax announced. "Let all species see what happens to those who are too weak to deserve respect." Jake watched in horror as Zephyrian soldiers boarded his ship. The horizon had no defenses. The crew members left behind were scientists and engineers, not warriors. "Please," Amanda said to the Zephyrian holding her. "We have families." "We have children," the warrior laughed. "Then they will learn from your example." Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. Her grip was getting weaker. "Tell Earth," she said. "Tell them we tried." "You're going to tell them yourself," Jake said. But he knew she was dying. The emergency signal was still broadcasting. Somewhere in space, Earth was receiving Ryan's message. They would know about the attack, but they would also know that humanity's first diplomatic mission had failed completely. Thrax stood over Lisa's body. "The humans claimed they wanted to join our council. Instead, they have joined the ranks of the conquered. Their world will make a fine addition to our empire." Jake felt anger burning in his chest. These creatures had murdered his friends, his crew, his ambassador. They had killed people who came offering gifts and friendship. "You made a mistake," Jake said quietly. "What did you say?" Thrax turned to face him. "You made a mistake, Jake," repeated louder. "You think we're weak because we chose peace. But we chose peace because we know what war really means." Thrax kicked Jake in the stomach. "Your planet will burn. Your people will serve us or die. This is the way of the galaxy." Jake could barely breathe, but he kept talking. "You don't know anything about humans. You don't know what we're capable of when we're angry." "I know enough," Thrax said. "I know you came here with one small ship. I know you have no real weapons. I know you're too soft to fight." Amanda was dragged past Jake. She was still alive, but barely. Blood ran down her face where the Zephyrian's claws had struck her. "Don't worry," Thrax said. "Some of you will live long enough to see your world conquered. We'll keep the useful ones as slaves." Ryan's voice came through the communication device one last time. "Signal sent. Earth will know what happened here. They'll know the truth about these monsters." A Zephyrian soldier smashed the device with his weapon. The last link to Earth was broken. Jake looked around the hall. Most of his crew was dead. The survivors were being chained and dragged away. The gifts they had brought were scattered and broken on the floor. Lisa's body lay near the platform where she had hoped to make her speech about friendship. Her blood was soaking into the speech she had written, making the words about peace impossible to read. "Load the survivors onto the transport ship," Thrax ordered. "They'll be useful for questioning. A galaxy needs to understand that humans are nothing special." Jake was hauled to his feet. His body hurt, but his mind was clear. He looked at Thrax and tried to remember every detail of the creature's face. "You're going to regret this," Jake said. "No," Thrax replied. "You're going to regret ever leaving your little planet." As Jake was dragged away, he could hear Thrax addressing the cameras that were broadcasting the attack across the galaxy. "Let this be a lesson to all species," Thrax said. "The Zephyrian Empire is strong. We take what we want. Those who submit will be allowed to live. Those who resist will share the fate of these foolish humans." The transport ship was cold and dark. Jake and the other survivors were thrown into a cargo hold with barely enough room to sit. Amanda was unconscious, her breathing shallow. Only 12 humans were still alive out of the 50 who had come to make peace. As the ship left Kepler Prime, Jake could see his beloved horizon through a small window. Zephyrian soldiers were stripping it apart, looking for anything useful. Then they destroyed it completely, leaving only debris floating in space. The galaxy had seen the attack. They had watched humans die while begging for peace. Some species would be frightened by Zephyrian strength. Others would be disgusted by their cruelty. But most would simply accept that another weak species had been conquered. Jake closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Somewhere in the distance, Earth was receiving Ryan's final message. Soon, his planet would know that their peaceful mission had ended in massacre. But the galaxy didn't know everything about humans. They didn't know about the secret shipyards or the hidden weapons. They didn't know about the military forces that Earth kept ready for the worst possible situation. Most importantly, they didn't know what humans were like when someone hurt their family. The transport ship carried its prisoners toward the Zephyrian prison world. Behind them, the galaxy continued its normal business, unaware that everything was about to change. In the cold darkness of the cargo hold, Jake made himself a promise. If he lived long enough, he would see these monsters pay for what they had done. He would see justice for Lisa, for Ryan, for all the good people who had died trying to make friends. The Zephyrians thought they had won. They thought they had conquered the humans before the war even started. They were wrong. The emergency signal reached Earth at exactly 3:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. President Helen Carter was woken from her sleep by the urgent buzzing of her secure phone. "What is it?" she asked, still half asleep. "Madam President, we've received an emergency transmission from the horizon. The diplomatic mission has been attacked." Helen sat up in bed. She had been a soldier before becoming president. She knew the sound of real crisis. How bad? Almost the entire crew is dead or captured. The Zephyrians broadcast the attack across the galaxy. They're claiming Earth as their next conquest. Helen was already getting dressed. "Get me Admiral Kate Sullivan. Wake up the Defense Council and activate Protocol 7. "Protocol 7? The voice on the phone sounded shocked. Are you sure? Dead sure. The time for peace is over? Across the planet, hidden facilities began to hum with activity. Deep underground, massive factories that had been disguised as mining operations started producing weapons and ships. The peaceful facade that Earth had shown the galaxy was about to be stripped away. Admiral Sullivan arrived at the Pentagon within an hour. She was a tough woman who had earned her rank fighting rebels on Mars. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes were cold as steel. How many of our people are dead? She asked. 43 confirmed killed. 7 survivors taken prisoner, reported Colonel Danny Rodriguez, the head of Earth's Special Forces. And the Zephyrians? They're preparing to invade our solar system. They think we're helpless. Helen walked into the war room, her face grim. They're about to learn how wrong they are. The room was full of military leaders who had been waiting for this moment. For years, they had prepared for the possibility that Earth's peaceful approach would fail. Now that it had, they were ready. Show me what we have, Helen ordered. The lights dimmed, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. Images of massive warships filled the air. They were sleek and deadly, built for one purpose: to destroy anyone who threatened Earth. The UE's Vengeance is our most powerful ship, Admiral Sullivan explained. It's twice the size of anything the Zephyrians have. We also have 50 destroyer-class vessels and 300 fighter craft. What about ground forces? Helen asked. Colonel Rodriguez stepped forward. The Human Strike Corps has been training for this scenario. We have 10,000 elite soldiers equipped with powered armor and advanced weapons. They're ready to deploy immediately. Dr. Alex Chun, Earth's chief weapons researcher, activated another display. We also have experimental weapons that have never been tested in combat. Kinetic bombardment systems that can destroy entire cities from orbit. AI-controlled fighter swarms that can overwhelm any defense. And this, the display showed a weapon that looked like a small metal sphere. What is it? Helen asked. An electromagnetic pulse bomb. One of these can shut down every electronic system. On a planet, their ships, their weapons, their communications. Everything. Helen studied the displays. Earth had been preparing for war while pretending to want peace. The galaxy thought humans were weak and helpless. They were about to discover the truth. How long until the fleet is ready? She asked. 48 hours, Admiral Sullivan replied. We can have ships at the Zephyrian prison world in 72 hours. Do it, and make sure the galaxy is watching when we arrive. Meanwhile, on the prison world of Koreth, Jake Morrison was learning what Zephyrian justice looked like. The prison was a nightmare of metal and stone, built into the side of a mountain. Thousands of aliens from conquered species were held there. Broken and hopeless. Jake and the other survivors were thrown into a cell that was barely large enough for them all. Amanda was still unconscious, her injuries getting worse without proper medical care. We need to get her to a doctor, Jake said to the Zephyrian guard. The guard laughed. The weak die. The strong survive. That's the way of the universe. Jake felt rage building inside him. These creatures had no honor, no mercy, no basic decency. They were nothing but bullies who picked on those weaker than themselves. But Jake also saw something else. The Zephyrians were overconfident. They thought they had already won. They weren't prepared for a real fight. You made a mistake, Jake said quietly. What mistake? The guard asked. You let one of us send a message to Earth. They know what you did. The guard's laugh was harsh. Let them know. What can they do? Your pathetic planet has no real military. We'll conquer it in a day. Jake smiled for the first time since the attack. We'll see about that. On Earth, the preparations continued. Around the clock, the U's Vengeance was completed ahead of schedule. Admiral Sullivan stood on its bridge, watching as the weapon systems came online. "All systems ready, Admiral," reported Captain Steve Walsh, the ship's commander. "Excellent. What's our destination?" "Korath. Intelligence says that's where they're holding our people. Then that's where we'll make our first statement." The fleet that left Earth was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ships were black as space, covered in armor that could deflect most weapons. They moved silently through the void, their engines designed to avoid detection. Colonel Rodriguez's soldiers were loaded into dropships, ready for combat. Each soldier wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster than any normal human. Their weapons could punch through solid steel. "Remember," Rodriguez told his troops, "we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every species that's been bullied by these monsters. Show them what happens when humans get angry." The fleet reached the edge of the Zephyrian system. 3 days after leaving Earth, Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the enemy ships patrol their territory. "They don't know we're here," Captain Walsh reported. "Good. Target their communications array first. I want them confused and blind." The attack began without warning. The Zephyrian ships were caught completely off guard. Their sensors had been designed to detect primitive weapons, not the advanced technology that Earth had developed in secret. The first volley of fire destroyed 6 Zephyrian ships instantly. Their crews didn't even have time to send a distress signal. "Move us into position over the prison world," Admiral Sullivan ordered, "and open a channel to the surface." A holographic display showed the prison where Jake and the others were being held. Zephyrian guards were running around in panic, trying to understand what was happening. "This is Admiral Sullivan of the United Earth Fleet," she announced. "You have exactly 10 minutes to release our people. After that, we will demonstrate why attacking humans was the biggest mistake you've ever made." The response came quickly. It was Warden Krax, the Zephyrian in charge of the prison. His voice was full of rage and fear. "You cannot threaten us. We have your people. If you attack, we will kill them all. Then you'll die with them," Admiral Sullivan replied calmly. "You have 9 minutes." Jake heard the announcement through the prison speakers. He looked at his fellow survivors, seeing hope in their eyes for the first time in days. "I told you," he said to the guard. "Earth doesn't abandon its people." The guard was no longer laughing. He was staring at the ceiling, where the sound of human ships could be heard through the rock. "Your ships are nothing," the guard said, but his voice was shaking. "We have conquered 100 worlds." "Not like this one," Jake replied. Admiral Sullivan watched the countdown timer. The Zephyrians were preparing their defenses, but they were too late. The human fleet was already in position. "Time's up," she said. "Colonel Rodriguez, you are cleared for insertion." "Copy that, Admiral." "Strike course. We are going in." The dropships launched from the Vengeance, like bullets from a gun. They smashed through the prison's defenses and landed in the courtyard. Zephyrian guards fired at them with everything they had, but their weapons couldn't penetrate the human armor. Colonel Rodriguez was the first out of his ship. His powered armor made him look like a metal giant. The Zephyrians, who had seemed so fearsome to the unarmed diplomats, now looked small and weak. "Find our people," Rodriguez ordered, "and show no mercy to anyone who stands in our way." The battle was swift and brutal. The Zephyrians had never faced soldiers like these. The humans moved with perfect coordination, their weapons cutting through alien armor like paper. Jake heard the sound of combat getting closer. The guard who had been taunting him was now cowering in the corner of the cell. "Please," the guard said. "I was just following orders." "So were the people you tortured," Jake replied. The cell door exploded inward. A figure in powered armor stepped through the smoke. The helmet retracted, revealing a human face. "Captain Morrison?" the soldier asked. I'm Lieutenant Carol Hayes. We're here to take you home." Jake looked at the soldier, then at the terrified guard. "What about them?" "They're not our problem anymore," Hayes replied. "But I don't think they'll be bothering anyone else." As the humans were evacuated, Admiral Sullivan's fleet began its real work. The weapons Dr. Chon had developed were tested for the first time. The kinetic bombardment system turned the prison into rubble. The AI fighters hunted down every Zephyrian ship that tried to escape. The electromagnetic pulse bomb was saved for last. It detonated high above the planet, shutting down every electronic system on the surface. The Zephyrians were left in darkness, their civilization crippled. "Message sent," Admiral Sullivan said. "Now let's go home and prepare for the next phase." As the hum? The rescue of the prisoners was just the beginning. Admiral Sullivan's fleet didn't return to Earth. Instead, they regrouped at the edge of Zephyrian space, waiting for reinforcements. President Carter had made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. The Zephyrians had declared war on humanity. Now humanity would show them what real war looked like. "We're not going to stop until every Zephyrian world is under our control," she announced to the War Council. "They wanted to conquer us. Now they'll learn what conquest really means." More ships arrived from Earth every day. The UES Retribution, commanded by Captain Steve Walsh, was even more powerful than the Vengeance. Behind it came dozens of smaller ships, each one packed with weapons and soldiers. Colonel Rodriguez had been promoted to general after the successful rescue mission. His strike corps had grown to 20,000 soldiers, all eager to avenge their fallen comrades. "The Zephyrians have 15 major worlds," Rodriguez reported. "We'll hit them all at once. They won't know where to defend." Admiral Sullivan studied the star charts. What about their home world? "Save it for last," President Carter said through the communication link. "I want Thrax to watch his empire burn before we come for him." The first wave of attacks began at dawn, Earth time. Human ships appeared simultaneously in 7 different star systems. The Zephyrians, still reeling from the loss of their prison world, were caught completely unprepared. Captain Walsh led the assault on Vorthik, an industrial world that produced weapons for the Zephyrian military. His ship, the Retribution, appeared in orbit without warning. "This is Captain Walsh of the United Earth Fleet," he announced. "You have 1 hour to evacuate all civilians. After that, we will destroy every military installation on this planet." The response was immediate and predictable. Zephyrian ships launched from the surface, their weapons blazing. But they were fighting technology they didn't understand. The human fighters were controlled by artificial intelligence. They moved faster than any living pilot could react. They dodged enemy fire with impossible precision and struck back with devastating accuracy. Within minutes, the Zephyrian fleet was destroyed. The planet's defenses were next. The kinetic bombardment system that Dr. Chun had developed turned military bases into smoking craters. "Target eliminated," Walsh reported. Moving to the next system, the pattern was repeated across Zephyrian space. Human forces appeared without warning, destroyed all military targets, then moved on. The Zephyrians had no time to organize a defense. The world of Krithos. General Rodriguez's soldiers landed in the middle of the planetary capital. The Zephyrians had thought their cities were safe from attack. They were wrong. "Citizens of Krithos," Rodriguez announced through the city's speakers, "your government has committed acts of war against humanity. Surrender now, and you will be treated fairly. Resist, and you will be destroyed." The Zephyrian military tried to fight back, but they were facing an enemy unlike anything they had encountered. The human soldiers moved through the city like ghosts, striking without warning and disappearing before the enemy could respond. Lieutenant Carol Hayes led a squad through the government district. Her armor's sensors could detect Zephyrian heartbeats. Through solid walls, her weapons could punch through their strongest barriers. "Contact ahead," she reported. "Zephyrian squad, 20 meters." The humans moved with perfect coordination. They had trained for urban combat on Earth, in simulations that replicated every possible scenario. The Zephyrians, used to fighting primitive enemies, had no answer for human tactics. The battle was over in hours. The Zephyrian government of Krethus surrendered unconditionally. Their military was destroyed, their weapons confiscated, their leaders arrested. "One down," Rodriguez reported. 6 more to go. But the humans weren't just fighting a military war. They were fighting a psychological one. Every battle was recorded and broadcast across the galaxy. The species that had watched humans die at Kepler Prime now watched humans destroy the most feared military in the galaxy. The broadcast showed Zephyrian soldiers running in terror from human forces. They showed mighty warships being reduced to scrap metal in minutes. They showed the proud Zephyrian Empire crumbling under human assault. On the Zephyrian homeworld, War Chief Thrax watched the reports with growing horror. His empire was being systematically destroyed by a species he had dismissed as weak and pathetic. "How is this possible?" he demanded. They had no weapons, no military, no strength. His advisor, a scarred veteran named Grax, studied the tactical reports. "They lied to us. The peaceful ship, the diplomatic mission, it was all a deception. They were studying us, learning our weaknesses." "Impossible," Thrax snarled. "I saw their fear. I watched them die." "You saw what they wanted you to see," Grax replied. "While you were executing their diplomats, they were preparing for war." Thrax's claws scraped against the metal floor. "Then we fight. We gather our remaining forces and crush them." "With what?" Grax asked. "Half our fleet is destroyed. Our industrial worlds are in ruins. And the humans haven't even used their full strength yet." The truth of those words became clear when the human fleet reached Zephyria Prime, the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Sullivan's forces had grown to over 200 ships. They surrounded the planet like a metal storm. "War Chief Thrax." Admiral Sullivan's voice echoed across the planet. "I am Admiral Kate Sullivan of the United Earth Fleet. Do you remember me?" Thrax's image appeared on the communication screen. He was still trying to look proud and defiant, but his fear was obvious. "I remember a weak species that begged for mercy," he said. "And I remember a coward who murdered diplomats," Sullivan replied. "Your empire is finished. Your military is destroyed. Your people are defeated. You have one choice. Surrender now, or watch your world burn." "Never," Thrax roared. "The Zephyrian Empire does not surrender to inferior species." "Then you've made your choice," Sullivan said calmly. "All ships, begin the final assault." The battle for Zephyria Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The humans didn't just attack military targets. They dismantled the entire Zephyrian civilization piece by piece. The orbital defense platforms were destroyed first, then the communication satellites, then the power stations. Within hours, the mighty Zephyrian capital was dark and silent. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the enemy planet burn. He thought about Lisa Parker, who had died believing in peace. He thought about Ryan Bell, who had tried to warn them about the danger. "This is for them," he said quietly. Admiral Sullivan heard him. "Yes, it is. But it's also for every species the Zephyrians have conquered. Today, their reign of terror ends." On the planet's surface, Zephyrian civilians huddled in their homes as human forces moved through the streets. But the humans weren't targeting innocent people. They were hunting specific individuals, the war criminals who had planned and executed the massacre at Kepler Prime. General Rodriguez led the hunt for Thrax personally. His soldiers moved through the government complex like an unstoppable force. Zephyrian guards tried to stop them, but their weapons were useless against human armor. "Thrax is in the central command bunker," reported Sergeant Bill Turner. 3 levels underground, behind heavy blast doors. "Then we go through them," Rodriguez replied. The blast doors were designed to withstand nuclear weapons. They lasted 30 seconds against human cutting tools. Rodriguez was the first through the breach, his armor's lights cutting through the darkness. Thrax was waiting for them in the center of the bunker. He was no longer the proud warrior who had murdered the human diplomats. He was a broken creature, cornered and desperate. "You cannot do this," he said. "I am a war chief of the Zephyrian Empire." "You're a murderer," Rodriguez replied. "And murderers face justice." "Justice?" Thrax laughed bitterly. "You destroyed my empire. You killed thousands of my people. Where is the justice in that?" "You started this war when you killed our ambassadors," Rodriguez said. "We're just finishing it." The trial of Thrax was broadcast across the galaxy. Jake Morrison was the first witness, describing the massacre at Kepler Prime. His voice was steady as he told the court about watching his friends die. "They came in peace," Jake said. "They brought gifts, not weapons. They offered friendship, not conquest, and you murdered them for it." Other survivors testified about their treatment in Zephyrian prisons. Amanda Toyes, still bearing scars from her captivity, described the torture and humiliation they had endured. "They told us we were weak," she said. "They said humans were nothing but slaves waiting to be conquered. They were wrong." The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings of the massacre, records of Zephyrian war crimes on dozens of worlds, testimony from survivors of their brutality. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all charges. The sentence was death. Admiral Sullivan carried out the execution herself. She wanted Thrax to see the face of human justice before he died. "Any last words?" she asked. Thrax looked at her with hatred burning in his yellow eyes. "You think you've won, but the galaxy will never accept you. They'll see what you really are, monsters wearing the mask of civilization." "Maybe," Sullivan replied, "but they'll never forget what happens to those who hurt our people." The execution was swift and final. War Chief Thrax, the creature who had started the war by murdering diplomats. 1 year after the fall of the Zephyrian Empire, the galaxy was a very different place. The species that had once dismissed humans as weak now spoke their name with respect and fear. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in her new office on Luna Station, humanity's first permanent military base outside the Sol system. Through the massive windows, she could see Earth in the distance, blue and beautiful and safe. "Admiral," her aide announced, "the Galactic Council delegation has arrived." Sullivan smiled coldly. A year ago, these same aliens had refused to even meet with human diplomats. Now they came begging for audiences with human military leaders. The delegation was led by Chancellor Vex, the insect-like creature who had once tried to negotiate humanity's surrender. Behind him walked representatives from 20 different species, all looking nervous and uncomfortable. "Chancellor," Sullivan said, not bothering to stand, "what brings you to human space?" "We have concerns," Vex said carefully, "about the Corellian situation." The Corellians were a peaceful species that had been recently attacked by the Drakmor Empire. The Drakmor were predators who enslaved other species for food and labor. Under the old galactic order, the Council would have issued a formal protest. "And done nothing else?" And Sullivan asked. "The Corellians have requested human assistance," Vex continued. "We feel this might escalate the situation unnecessarily." Sullivan's expression didn't change, but her voice became dangerously quiet. "Are you telling humanity who we can and cannot help?" The delegation took a collective step backward. "They remembered what had happened to the last species that tried to dictate terms to humanity. Of course not, Vex said quickly. We simply hoped for consultation before any action is taken. The time for consultation was when the Drakmor attacked. Sullivan replied, just like it was when the Zephyrians attacked our diplomats. But you did nothing then, and you're doing nothing now. On the Corellian home world, the situation was desperate. The Drakmor had landed invasion forces and were rounding up civilians for their slave ships. The Corellian military, equipped with primitive weapons, could barely slow them down. President Mira of Corellia sent a desperate message to Earth. Please help us. You're our only hope. President Carter received the message in the White House Situation Room. Around her sat the leaders who had guided humanity through its transformation from peaceful explorers to galactic enforcers. What do we know about the Drakmor? She asked. General Rodriguez, now in charge of all human ground forces, activated a holographic display. They're raiders and slavers. They've conquered 12 species in the last 50 years. The Council knows about their crimes, but considers them internal affairs. And the Corellians? Peaceful farmers and artists, no military to speak of. They've never hurt anyone. Carter nodded. Then we helped them. Admiral Sullivan, how quickly can we get forces to their system? A strike fleet can be there in 18 hours, Sullivan replied from Luna Station. 3 heavy cruisers and a full regiment of Marines. Do it, and make sure the galaxy is watching. Captain Steve Walsh commanded the strike fleet as it approached the Corellian system. His flagship, the UES Justice, was one of the newest human warships armed with weapons that could crack planets. Drakmor ships detected, his tactical officer reported. 15 vessels in orbit around Corellia. They're firing on cities. Walsh's jaw tightened. The Drakmor weren't just conquering the planet. They were terrorizing the population for sport. All ships, attack formation, he ordered. Let's show these animals what happens when they prey on. Be innocent. The Drakmor fleet was caught completely by surprise. Their sensors hadn't detected the approaching human ships until they were already under attack. The first volley destroyed 3 Drakmor vessels instantly. Human ships. The Drakmor commander screamed over the communication system. You have no authority here. This is Drakmor space now. Wrong, Walsh replied. This is human space. You're just trespassing. The battle was swift and brutal. The Drakmor ships were designed for raiding defenseless colonies, not fighting a real military. Within an hour, their entire fleet was either destroyed or fleeing for their lives. General Rodriguez's Marines landed on the planet's surface to find horrors that made even veteran soldiers sick. The Drakmor had been using Corellian civilians as living food sources. Children were kept in cages, waiting to be butchered. Round up every Drakmor on the planet, Rodriguez ordered, and signal their home world. Tell them we want to discuss terms. Drakmor homeworld was a fortress planet, covered in weapon installations and defensive systems. For centuries, it had been considered impregnable. The Drakmor believed their planet was safe from any attack. They were wrong. Admiral Sullivan's main fleet arrived in Drakmor space 2 days later. 50 human warships surrounded the planet, their weapons targeting every military installation on the surface. This is Admiral Sullivan of the United Earth Fleet, she announced. You have attacked and enslaved peaceful people under human protection. You have 1 hour to release all slaves and surrender your military leaders for trial. Refuse, and your planet burns. The Drakmor response was predictable. They fired every weapon they had at the human fleet. Their most powerful guns could barely scratch human armor. The return fire was devastating. In 30 minutes, every Drakmor weapon on the planet was reduced to molten metal. Their proud fortress world was left defenseless. Time's up, Sullivan. said calmly, "Colonel Hayes, you are cleared for planetary assault." Lieutenant Colonel Carol Hayes had been promoted after her heroic actions in the HFY War. She now commanded the 1st Assault Division, humanity's most elite ground force. Her soldiers landed on the Drakmor homeworld like a storm of vengeance. They moved through the enemy cities with ruthless efficiency, hunting down war criminals and freeing enslaved populations. The Drakmor civilians, seeing their mighty military crushed in hours, surrendered without resistance. They had spent centuries terrorizing other species. Now they cowered before human soldiers who showed them no mercy. The trials that followed were broadcast across the galaxy. Jake Morrison, now serving as humanity's chief prosecutor for war crimes, presented evidence of Drakmor atrocities spanning generations. They treated sentient beings like livestock, he told the galactic audience. They fed on the children of peaceful species. They turned entire worlds into hunting grounds for their pleasure. The evidence was overwhelming. Hundreds of survivors testified about Drakmor cruelty. Entire species had been driven to extinction to feed Drakmor appetites. The sentences were harsh but fair. The Drakmor military leaders were executed. Their remaining forces were disbanded. Their slave ships were destroyed. Their conquered worlds were liberated and given independence. But the humans didn't stop there. They established permanent bases in former Drakmor territory, making it clear that any species that returned to the old ways of conquest and slavery would face human justice. The message spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Humanity had appointed itself the protector of the weak and the enemy of the strong who preyed on them. Some species resented human interference. Others welcomed it. But all of them understood that the galaxy had changed forever. On Earth, Amanda Torres had been appointed as the first director of galactic affairs. Her office in Geneva received hundreds of requests for help every day. Some came from species being attacked by their neighbors. Others came from populations being oppressed by their own governments. "We can't police the entire galaxy," she told President Carter during their weekly briefing. "We don't have to," Carter replied. "We just have to make examples of the worst offenders. The others will get the message." And they did. Pirates who had raided shipping lanes for decades suddenly found legitimate work. Warlords who had enslaved entire systems released their captives and sought pardons. The mere possibility of human intervention had changed the behavior of countless species. The Galactic Council, once a powerless debating society, found itself with real authority for the first time in centuries. But that authority came with a price. They had to enforce human standards of justice and morality. Chancellor Vex, now a close ally of humanity, addressed the council chamber on the first anniversary of the HFY War. "1 year ago, we witnessed the massacre of human diplomats," he said. "We called it an internal matter. We chose to do nothing. That choice cost us our credibility and nearly cost the galaxy its peace." He gestured to the human observer section, where Jake Morrison sat representing Earth's interests. "Today, we live in a safer galaxy because humanity chose to act when we chose to ignore. They have shown us that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice." Jake listened to the speech with mixed emotions. The galaxy was indeed safer, but the cost had been enormous. Lisa Parker's dream of peaceful coexistence had been replaced by human hegemony backed by overwhelming force. After the session, Jake walked through the memorial garden on Luna Station. Statues of the Kepler Prime victims stood in a circle around a fountain that ran with water from Earth. Lisa Parker's statue was in the center, her hand extended in friendship just as it had been on that terrible day. The inscription beneath read, "She believed in peace. We made it possible." Admiral Sullivan joined him at the memorial. She was older now, her hair completely gray, but her eyes were still sharp as steel.